Sydney, Darwin and back, that you can have a little camp, or as a cabin crew?
As a cabin crew, yes. I mean, I will give that us. We do look after each other one another as well as we can. So if we're out, if we're about to endeavour on to a back of the clock and someone has come expressing their concerns that their child was up all night or all day, sick and whatnot, we will often, display empathy and ask them, what position would you like to fly today, and would you like to take the first break? Would you like to? How about you sit down and we'll do X, Y, and Z for you. In terms of, do we have a spot for them to have a little nap or a snooze, it would be exactly the same as I previously explained.
So in terms of the safety of the plane and your ability to deal with an emergency, do you have any sort of capacity to be aware that the pilots aren't asleep at the wheel, as it were?
There is a procedure in which flight crew do take their rest, and we are informed, and we are to follow along with that procedure.
So you're involved in that procedure?
Yeah, that's correct.
Could you describe to this committee that procedure?
It's called controlled rest, where one of the operating pilots will take a period of rest. They will inform the cabin crew. They will ring the cabin crew and inform them they're taking the controlled rest. That's for a certain amount of time. We then check our watches, inform the other crew, and then when that time period is over, we then ring back the flight deck and go in with a hot drink. And, yeah.
Is it fair to say that appears to work well?
Appears to, yes.
Thanks.
You give an interesting perspective on driving home. After an extended shift, has that issue been raised with the company, i.e. has it been explained that for most staff members getting a one-way trip home creates great difficulty?
Each individual cabin crew member, when requesting transport, has expressed the workability of that idea. They've always expressed that, well, how am I supposed to come back and get my car? There have been circumstances where the cabin crew member has been lucky enough to obtain a ride back to the airport the next day, but that is based on circumstances and who you get on the phone on the day at the other end. Yeah, they have individually raised those concerns. So I would say that the company is aware of that not being workable.
Is this an issue that arises in enterprise bargaining negotiations?
I don't believe I'm able to comment on that.
It's not covered by your enterprise agreement, or is it?
What's the transport?
Is this entitlement to transport covered by it? No. Perhaps it should be. In terms of what you suggest, a lack of opportunities to take a meal break in pairing of quick sectors, can you explain that further for us?
We have very short flights. I'll speak out of Sydney because they're probably the best examples I can give you because I operate out of Sydney. A Gold Coast will take us about an hour and 5 minutes to fly. So we'll have a pairing of a double Gold Coast, which means up and down to the Gold Coast 4 times, on the aircraft that most of us just really despise operating on, which is the Airbus A321, because it can hold a passenger load, depending on the aircraft, Rego 210 to 214.
It's a stretch version of the A320.
Correct.
Yep.
So when you operate a double Gold Coast on a Friday night on the A321, you do not get time to eat at all. You barely get time to drink water. And that's operated one less cabin crew member. So it's operated with 5 cabin crew. So you really feel the pressure.
So what have the company said about that?
Well, under my contract of employment, well, you're allowed to have your 20 minutes break undisturbed, but if you don't, you receive a monetary sort of reward, you could say, for not being able to eat. Other contracts of employment don't have that built into their contracts, though. So
Well, which do the staff prefer, the break or the money?
I would say 90% would prefer to eat. But if we're not, I think the general conception is that if we're not going to eat, we want to get something for it. But it's, you know, to be quite honest, I mean, when I operate one of those duties, I'm starving. Sorry?
Just out of interest, do the pilots eat?
We prepare the pilots' foods. Yes,
Yes.
they do eat. Yeah.
You've noticed that.
That's
I'm sure.
that's our number. Yeah, we look after the flight deck first before we actually start everything else.
On a lighter note, I actually think they ought to ban Tucker on the Canberra-Sydney run. It's a waste of time.
Well, that's an extremely short sector, isn't it? And how frequently would crew members have experienced the near 15 hours duty permitted under the agreement?
I personally haven't experienced that, and under my contract of employment, I can't.
Right.
But I have a lot of professional peers that are under the Team Jetstar contract of employment that do that. I would say a good 60% have experienced that, the close to 15-hour duties.
And how frequently, to your knowledge, is that sort of shift experienced by those?
In my personal opinion, too frequent.
Well, when you're saying once a month, once every 3 months, twice a week, what do you mean?
Once, maybe every 3 weeks.
Okay.
Per person. I mean, yeah, per flight attendant.
All right. Obviously, that's because that's what people tell you rather than what you've seen yourself?
No, from what I've seen.
Okay. And are you required to sort of stand by for call up? Is that part of your roster? Do you have a standby period where you have to be available to work on short notice?
We do. We have rostered live days, which are days where you're on call for a period of 12 hours,
Right.
but you do those days at home. You can denominate those days to be available. So I guess in a term, I could, to explain it to you better, they're incentive pay days.
Right.
If you're one that doesn't want to chase the money, you'll denominate them. So those days will count towards your monthly hours.
Sorry, if you denominate them,
Correct.
they'll count towards your monthly
Correct.
hours. And if you don't denominate them, they're overtime or something, are they?
Well, you get your hourly rate of pay on top of your base pay if you do not denominate them, but that means your hours that you work on those days don't count towards your monthly totals. So you could do an extra 40 to 50 hours, depending on how many of those days you are allocated at roster build, on top of your contracted hours.
Yeah, per 28-day cycle, you mean?
We're on a monthly cycle of 30 days.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, I've just got a couple more questions, if I may. Some might say that this is just part and parcel of the job, backup clock, long hours occasionally, or is it a case of that it's gone too far in some cases? How do you characterise it amongst your peers?
That it's gone too far.
With foreign cabin crew, I think they can be on those sectors that are on their way to Singapore or whatever. Is that right? Do you have foreign trained cabin crew on Jetstar flights, domestic flights?
Foreign training cabin crew?
Yeah.
So do you mean, are they training on our domestic sectors?
Yeah. Well, you have foreign cabin crew on Jetstar flights, correct?
Correct.
Right. Are they trained at Australian ground schools or are they trained overseas?
Memory serves correctly. They're trained. I don't think they're trained in Australia. No.
No, but that's something we can check with Jetstar.
Sure.
But is there any differential, in your understanding, in the level of training for cabin crew that that are based overseas compared to cabin crew that are based here domestically?
It's my personal opinion that the requirements are not as strict as the requirements for cabin crew that are employed or the training that's done in Australia, because there's been a lot of complaints that, for example, like the English isn't up to scratch. They haven't been taught as thoroughly as the crew that were recruited from here and trained here.
Then again, you have foreign cabin crew who have impeccable communication and English language skills.
Of course,
as well.
there are.
Yep. Just finally, what changes would you and your peers, because I understand you've had a number of your peers that have spoken to you about you giving evidence today.
Yep.
What sort of practical changes would you like to see?
More realistic rostering for cabin crew, shorter duties, possibly breaking up those back of the clocks and overnighting us, and just a fair and equitable distribution of the longer duties across the board.
What's the morale like amongst your colleagues?
Morale? I would say it's a very toxic workplace at the moment. So very low.
Okay.
Is that as much to do about a safe, stable job as anything else?
I'm sorry, Senator?
Is it as much to do about a safe, stable job as anything else? Is that what people are worried about?
I don't understand your question.
Security of employment in a safe working environment, is that the issue?
Security of employment and safe working environment. It is the issue.
Well, if it's not the issue, what is? What's the key issue?
Well, we love our jobs. We'd like to hold on to our jobs. We don't want it to be this hard and don't understand why it has to be this hard. We would like for our employers to maybe listen as we voice our concerns and work with us to building a happier workplace and having a safer work environment.
So it would be fair to say, not for everyone, but generally, people are happy to work for Qantas and Jetstar or whoever. You need the stability of the job, but you feel the working conditions are not safe?
We need a work-life and personal life balance and a safer workplace back to the workers. That's what we'd like.
Because of the fatigue issue, I take. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct.
And so that then comes into the balance between what you do when you're not at work and what you do
Correct.
at work. And do some people manage that better than others, do you think?
I think that you're always going to have people that manage certain aspects of a job better than other people. I think that's just common in life. But I would say on this issue of fatigue, I'd say that we're all pretty much on the same side. And it doesn't range in age differences. Like, it's not felt less amongst the younger flight attendants compared to the elder flight attendants. It's felt across the board.
Yeah, well, I have to say I'd much prefer to fly on Jetstar and Qantas than American Airlines, but anyhow, that's just my observation. Senator O'Brien?
No, that's...
Senator Xenophon?
Thank you for your evidence.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I guess that concludes this hearing. Thank you very much for everyone for your attendance. Thank you to the staff up there and the Secretariat. We'll see what happens.